In life, there's something called cause and effect. And when someone punishes you, it's natural to want to respond, especially if you have the physical means to do so. This applies not only to individuals, but also to nations, creating a cycle of retaliation that we're witnessing on a global scale. The United States has long been in a position to bully its neighbors or impose tariffs and taxes, confident in its economic power, but things have shifted dramatically. The 10% tax on China meant to strengthen the US economy is backfiring. China is no longer the China of the 1990s or 2010s. It has become the world's largest manufacturing and industrial economy. In many key industries, China has not just caught up with the US but outperformed it. Trump's so-called four-dimensional chess is unraveling as China, under Beijing's leadership, responds to US tariffs with its own tactics, imposing a 10% levy on cars imported from the US, which directly affects automakers like Tesla, GM, Ford, and Mercedes, all of which rely on exports to China. This means the cost to export heavy engine cars from the US to China will now be 25%, effectively slapping a massive tax on American cars. This extra 10% tax is essentially the equivalent of a total ban on US autos in China. Manufacturing vehicles in the US is already more expensive than in China due to costly supply chains, high energy costs, and outdated factories compared to China's cutting-edge automated systems. Moreover, China is revolutionizing the electric vehicle (EV) industry with highly automated and efficient factories, using advanced robotic solutions to build cars faster and cheaper, making Chinese cars world-class at a fraction of the cost of their Western counterparts. Trump may have thought he was playing a masterstroke, but it's clear he's made a colossal mistake, essentially sealing the fate of the US auto industry by making it harder for American automakers to stay competitive. His words during the campaign, claiming that if he didn't win, there would be no auto industry left in 2 to 3 years, are starting to feel like a prophecy becoming reality. While US workers were promised protection and job security, the auto industry now faces a dilemma. If exports to China continue to drop, US car companies will face massive losses. This is a basic cause and effect scenario that could eventually affect jobs in the US, leading to a ripple effect in the labor market. In 2024, US automakers like Ford and GM sent over $3 billion in automobiles to China, but now China is practically shutting the door to American-made cars. The Chinese auto market, the largest in the world, with domestic sales surpassing $22 million cars in just 1 year, is a level of demand that can't be replicated anywhere else. Chinese consumers have a wealth of options, with global brands like Volkswagen, Mercedes, and BMW producing in China, and local Chinese brands like BYD and Enio gaining market share. If US automakers can't keep up, Chinese buyers won't even notice, continuing to buy domestic or foreign brands that already produce in China. For example, Ford's earnings could drop by $2 billion or more in 2025, with their stock price plummeting by 19% last year. On top of that, Ford has quality control issues to contend with, and with the impact of China's import charges, their profit margins will be squeezed even further. Their shipments to China will likely drop, and even if they try to sell, they may lose money on every vehicle. While Beijing's tariffs may not hurt China's economy significantly, they have the potential to destroy US manufacturing. Instead of focusing on strengthening domestic industries, America has been preoccupied with global escapades, leaving China to build up an industrial ecosystem under the radar. China's industrial capability is now so robust that they've insulated themselves from US tariffs. Chinese automakers now account for 32% of global vehicle manufacturing, covering both combustion engines and electric vehicles, while the United States produces only 11% of global output, a disparity that is growing every year. Essentially, the game has changed, and the future of the auto industry is no longer in the hands of US manufacturers. It's in China's hands. Unless something drastic changes, the US auto industry will soon be playing catch-up in a market where China is already miles ahead. While most automobiles are used domestically, no country in the world can afford to ignore China's manufacturing capacity when it comes to cheap, affordable cars if you want to create cheaper vehicles. You simply have to rely on Chinese production. In other words, Trump made a critical misstep. China's initial tariffs on US LNG and coal were just the beginning, and Beijing's move to restrict essential minerals was a follow-up. But notice, the timing of China's latest tax on US vehicles, it came right after Trump confirmed his import tariffs on global steel and aluminum. Donald Trump imposed a 25% tariff on global steel, impacting all exporters worldwide, including countries like Japan, Canada, and Germany, which sell steel to the US. The big question is who ultimately bears the cost of these steel tariffs. It's the customers, which in this case means US consumers. As a result, cars in the US are about to get significantly more expensive, with hundreds of dollars added to the price of each car. US imports of steel exceed $23 billion annually, so US importers will pay 25% more for the imported steel they need. They might opt to buy steel made in the US, but that would mean spending even more, likely 25% or more. An automobile requires almost 1 ton of steel and a lot of aluminum to produce, whether it's gas-powered or electric. China patiently waited for Trump to make this critical error before launching its counterpunch against the US car sector. The result is that US automakers will soon feel the impact. Will American car companies disappear entirely? No, but they will likely be forced to focus solely on the domestic US market. Trump has focused too heavily on extracting revenue through tariffs, but neglected the broader picture of expanding US supply chains. The sequence of events here is all wrong. All the major Western countries have made the same mistake, and as a result, China's vehicle exports have skyrocketed from last place to first in just 4 years. Chinese exports have gone from fewer than 1 million vehicles annually to about 5 million, surpassing Japan, which was once the world's leader in car exports. By comparison, the US exported only about 900,000 vehicles last year. Now, with Trump's steel tariffs and China's retaliatory taxes, US car exports are expected to plummet even further. When Trump was negotiating with the EU over tariffs, one of his main complaints was that the Eurozone wasn't buying enough Fords and Chevys, while German cars like Mercedes and BMWs were everywhere in the US. Why? Because US cars have often been less fuel efficient and not as high quality. Now, with rising costs due to tariffs, US cars are going to get even more expensive. Even if the EU reduces tariffs on US cars, the price gap between American-made vehicles and their German counterparts will still be significant. The ultimate losers here are US consumers. In any trade war, the customer always loses, and this is a perfect example. Americans are about to pay much more for cars that might not offer the same value as those from overseas manufacturers. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for supporting American-made products. But is it really a victory to pay more for the same product? The reality is that we're living through a situation where either Trump is playing some form of advanced 4D chess, or he set up a costly and damaging trap for US consumers. A 25% steel tariff could add up to $1,500 to the cost of a new vehicle. For many US households, that's a full month's worth of savings. The key point is that American manufacturers are likely going to raise their prices to match the new costs. Domestic steel might even cost more than the 25% increase, inflating costs even further. Think about buying a cup of coffee at a cafe. If the price of beans goes up 50%, they might charge you $1 more for your coffee. Similarly, American manufacturers will raise prices, passing those costs on to you, the consumer. If you live in the US, you know that owning a car is already expensive. Prices on virtually everything related to cars have surged since 2020. Used car prices have gone up 40%. Maintenance and repair costs are up by 30%, and car insurance has risen 29%. If your car's gasket fails, you're looking at 20% higher repair costs. The fallout from this trade battle is burning through household budgets, and the worst part is if consumer pressure becomes too great, car sales are likely to drop. But that's not all. The escalation might continue. Trump is so unpredictable, anything could happen next. What if he decides to reimpose tariffs on Mexico and Canada? We already know that Ford and General Motors produce millions of cars in both countries. This would mean cars made in the US but exported to other countries would face even higher penalties. Sure, more cars will be produced domestically, but the cost will skyrocket. It's important to remember that this is Donald Trump we're talking about. His decisions are often erratic and unpredictable. Sure, it might be a political win to campaign against tariffs in the upcoming elections, but it's far from healthy for the global economy.